Let's continue our discussion about beyond language learning, some perspectives on materials design. And in this connection, I've got a subtopic, which is the relations between language learners and teachers, and the values and opportunities offered by materials design and the attitudes of learners about materials design. That's what we're gonna see now in detail, right? The main argument presented by Littlejohn and Windiart in their article Beyond Language Learning, Some Perspectives on Materials Design is that materials suggest the learning of classroom roles. I mean, this is how the materials, in other words, the language materials can demonstrate the role relations between the students and teachers, what sort of relationship they could be having, whether they are having, assuming the teacher to hold the role of, a sage on the stage, or as a, problem solver, problem poser, or just, as a facilitator or as a helper in the classroom. This very much rests upon language material. If, for example, we've got IRF model, which is, interaction, response, and feedback model, that very much reveals that the teachers should be at the front of the classroom. I mean, teacher-fronted classroom, in other words. Well, I would just like you to reflect, do we have such instances in our materials? I mean, in the context of our Pakistan, right? And what about the use of pattern drills in such materials, or gap-filling exercises in the context of Pakistan, right? And another question to be reflected is, would you observe such role of teacher as possessor of knowledge? I mean, should we accept it, or should we dispute this, that the teacher is the possessor of knowledge and the students are empty vessels and or the passive recipients of language knowledge, right? And how often do publishers produce such roles in materials? And it's important to examine this question in the context of Pakistan. I mean, is it the publishers who are bound by the curriculum to produce materials which assume the role relations between students and teachers? Well, as regards the question of opportunities for language learning as demonstrated through materials, I would suggest that there should be some opportunities of problem solving. So in this regard, we could avoid bringing in some exercises which are closed questions in their nature, or closed exercises, because closed exercises would, assume students as a passive learners in the classroom, or empty vessels. So what we can do, we can bring in some whole tasks which are problem posing, which require students to solve some problems instead of teaching them, for example, the conditional sentences. Rather, if we want to teach the conditional sentences, first conditional, we could bring in some an activity or an exercise which could pose problems to the students and require them to answer those problems or resolve those problems, right? The important questions, how about the materials which address our moral sensibilities or sensitivities? Well, the question here to be reflected, how far learners may integrate values presented in materials. And this is very important because the materials designed for language learning, should be designed in such a way as to suit the moral sensitivities of the learners. This is a very important point here to be noted, because if materials, touch upon or, go against the moral sensibilities of the learners might get offended, easily get offended, and they might not be able to do well in the classroom. So there is a strong relationship between the moral values and the materials design. And it's important to critically analyze our own national language curriculum document of 2006, how moral values are projected there. So, for example, if we've got a co-education class, combination of both females and males, boys and girls. So, if the task is on, if the task is in itself is sexist in nature, for example, which sees males as brave, as morally upright or something like that. So on the other hand, the females might be offended. So this is how we can avoid bringing in such topics in the classroom which could go against the moral sensibilities of language learners.